Hello, everybody. My name is Parker, and my project is called Looking at Gays in Film. I will be using queer theory analysis to analyze my films. So, my introduction. In this project, I'm going to look at homosexuals in film and how they are portrayed, and how films can have stereotypes about homosexuals in them. The three movies I will be using in my analysis are Moonlight, directed by Barry Jenkins and was released in 2017, Brokeback Mountain, directed by Ang Lee, released in 2005, and Call Me By Your Name, directed by Luca Guadagnino, released in 2018. My subtopics are narrative, literary, cinematic, and cultural, and what I'm going to be talking about for each of them. In narrative, we will talk about plot. In literary, we will talk about theme. In cinematic, we'll talk about music and coloring. And in cultural, we'll talk about values and beliefs. My thesis statement is using plot, music, coloring, and values and beliefs, the portrayal of homosexual characters in the films Moonlight, Call Me By Your Name, and Brokeback Mountain gives way to a view of homosexuals that is stereotypical to movies and films. So first off, we have narrative elements. Plot of each film help tell the stories of different homosexuals in different walks of life, keeping uniform to the idea of hiding who you truly are, and using stereotypical tropes mainly used in LGBT movies and relationships. In the movie Moonlight, we watch Chiron grow up through different phases of his life, and we constantly see him not fitting in and being an outcast in where he's growing up because he is gay, and we watch him grow up and become a man, and see his experiences dealing with bullying and just growing up homosexual in general. In Brokeback Mountain, we see falling in love unexpectedly and having to hide it. We see Jack and Ennis fall in love on Brokeback Mountain, and then we see them grow older into older men and constantly meeting up with each other and getting married, not with each other though, with wives. But we clearly see them how they are not happy and they unsatisfied with their wives, constantly having trouble and fights, and we see them get together throughout the movies and watch them fall in love. And in Call Me By Your Name, we see falling in love young as the plot, and we see Oliver and Elio meet and fall in love, and Elio is really young and Oliver is an older man, and in sorry, in the I'm one-shotting this, so if you've listened to this far, I'm so sorry, but in the article Boys to Men by Greg Kilday, they talk about how gay relationships as seen in film are often between older male and younger male. It's never really same age, or there's always a big difference in age. And this feeds into the stereotype that older gay men are pedophiles or prey on young boys, as the old world would see that they see a relationship between a young boy and an older man, and they think he's grooming the older man is grooming the younger man, and often this is not true. In reality, there are all types of relationships, and not all ones with a big age difference are bad, nor were the younger boys groomed. And I think this movie definitely has the stereotypes of those relationships that men and older men are always with younger men. Yes. Next, we have literary elements. The symbols in each film are tied to the overall love story being told. Often symbols are ones that are used repeatedly, especially in LGBT films. In the movie Brokeback Mountain, the symbol is the mountain they fell in love on. Jack and Ennis constantly go back to this mountain every few months in the movie, and it's a symbol of their love, basically. This mountain really encapsulates what they meant and how they feel about being in love. In Moonlight, we see the use of blue being a symbol in Chiron's life. Everything had a blue undertone to it. The school he went to, the shirts he wore, the color of his car, the lighting in most of the scenes had a blue hint to it, and it really ties into the overall story of Chiron and him growing up as a homosexual and his life story. And in Call Me by My Name, of course, we have the peach, which if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to get too descriptive, but something happens with a peach with one of the characters, and we constantly see the peach throughout the film. We see peach trees all the way, and it really represents the love between Oliver and Elio, and how Elio feels about Oliver, how it's constantly there. And the stereotypes used in the symbols are often having color be a symbol in LGBT films, being a main symbol for them. Next we have cinematic elements. Music and coloring in the films have notes of homosexuality, and use them in the films helps further tell the story as an LGBT one. The music used is stereotypical of homosexuality, light and flowery almost. So what I'm talking about with the music is, for example, in Call Me By Your Name, and the soundtrack is very airy and very filled with love, and you see in a lot of LGBT movies that the soundtrack is like this, that there is piano and violin, and I don't know, I just kind of want to see some hard rock in an LGBT movie, you know what I mean? One of the songs that I reference here, Mystery of Love, you can go listen to that on Spotify, it's amazing. You can really tell what I mean when I talk about the soundtrack. In Moonlight, for coloring, we see bisexual coloring throughout the film. As I mentioned before, in the literary unit elements, the color of blue, we see even in the movie poster for Moonlight, we see the bisexual coloring of the blue and the purple and the darker blue, I think it is. That's a bisexual flag. But we see this throughout the whole film, in scenes where Chiron is with Kevin. Often it'll be a bisexual color lighting, and it just really helps tell the story, and it has a really a homosexual feel to it, if you know what I mean. And in Brokeback Mountain, we have coloring and music as both of them. The soundtrack for Brokeback Mountain is great, very country, a lot of love songs, very lovey-dovey, good background music. Coloring for Brokeback Mountain is very light and bright, which is good, and I think it helps tell the story. So, in cultural elements, values and beliefs in each film are explored by how the society acts and treats homosexuals. The films show the stereotypes of how cultures treat homosexuals. So, in Moonlight, we have Chiron growing up in black culture. We often see Chiron being beat up and chased and bullied and outcast for being gay, for being different. And this article I have here, Black-White Differences in Attitudes Towards Homosexuality and Gay Rights by Gregory Lewis. They talk about surveys. They took surveys between black and white communities and how accepting they are of homosexuality. There wasn't much difference, but researchers in 1993 surveyed around 100 people and found that blacks were 10% more likely than whites to find homosexual relationships always wrong. Now, this isn't always true because, of course, it's a survey, so we can't get an accurate reading on it. But this shows that blacks and whites have some problems with homosexuality, and it is shown clearly in Moonlight, with the word faggot being used constantly around Sharon, how he stands out for being gay, how blacks really are indifferent and kind of against it. But we really see that in how the culture reacts to him in Moonlight. In Brokeback Mountain, we see the Southern culture react to Jack and Ennis being together. We see Ennis's wife finding out that they're together and being disgusted and so upset and like divorcing him and leaving him and getting upset. And we hear Ennis talk about how when he was a child, his dad forced him to go see a body in a ditch where they cut off his genitals and dragged him around because they found out he was sleeping with a man. We see all these reactions to gay people in Southern culture, and in reality, it's just it stereotypes how Southern people view LGBT people, because currently how Southern people view LGBT people are positive and not always negative, and it's not as severe as it was back during this movie. And this article I have here called Not a Gay Cowboy, it talks about how the film was received in the West and how it changed Westerns and how it changed the views of people. So when the film was first announced, Brokeback Mountain, it was majorly rejected and passed off as a disgusting gay cowboy movie by most Southerners and Westerns, because they didn't really like homosexuality. They didn't view it in a positive light. They thought, oh, ew. But after it came out, people started to revise and go back on their statements after they've seen the film and how beautiful it is and what an amazing story it tells. And the film was really revolutionary in that way because it changed the views of a generation, basically. This movie came out and a lot of people saw homosexuality in a different light. They didn't, they saw it as a normal thing now. And in the movie, you know, that this doesn't happen yet in the movie, and it just, the movie shows how the stereotypes of the Southern culture are shown. And in Call Me By Your Name, the Italian culture, they are very accepting. There was no really backlash to Oliver and Elio being together. They were very open about it, very togetherness. It's just very accepting. So not really much stereotypes in there. So, stereotypes in homosexual scene in film. We talked about the common tropes, which, for example, you know, unrequited love and having to hide who you are, and those are the main tropes we see in films that are based on homosexuals that really are stereotypes, because most homosexuals, I don't want to say most, a lot of homosexuals don't have to hide their relationships, you know. And then we have types of relationships, you know, the young man and the older man. That stereotype is really harmful to young LGBT people who like want to date an older man, for example. But that's another stereotype in the film we see, is a type of relationship. And then the cultural reaction to homosexuals that we see in films being negative and never really having a positive light to it. So that's another big stereotype that we see in film. So then again, we're going to recite my thesis. Using plot, music, coloring, and values and beliefs, the portrayal of homosexual characters in the films Moonlight, Call Me By Your Name, and Brokeback Mountain gives way to a view of homosexuals that is stereotypical to movies and films. So, we're going to review my subtopics. Narrative, we talked about plot. Literary, we talked about symbol. Cinematic, we talked about music and coloring. And cultural, we talked about values and beliefs. Call to action. So, I want you guys to think, after you've seen an LGBT movie, you know, was any of it accurate? Was any? Do you